Shalom Aleichem, Erev Tov, good evening. Welcome back to Mishpat Tzedek. The last shiur that we had here on a Monday evening on New York time, on my calendar, seems to have been the 14th of July, right before I flew to Eretz Israel. So it has been a very, very long time. Now I'm happy because I've seen most of your faces, if not in person, then on other Zoom shiurim that we've had. Limud Torah doesn't ever stop here at Kehillat HaShamayim. But sometimes, as the holidays come and they go and they take up all the weekdays, we don't always have the opportunity to sit together. But I'm looking forward, B'ezrat Hashem, for the most part, for an entire winter of continuous limud Torah together. B'ezrat Hashem. Now, I made a mistake, and it's okay to make mistakes, but I need to ask your permission for this mistake. I had assumed that we had finished the final Pesukim and Shemot about Midvar Sheker Tirchak, about staying away from falsehood. And I had one more section, a few Rambams that I wanted to do with you then. I thought I did them. Turns out in my notes, we didn't do them. But I didn't prepare that shiur properly. I only realized that a little bit ago as I'm sitting here. And I prepared an entirely different shiur. So, Baruch Hashem, Yedidia should have refuah shlema. He's been teething, and I until about an hour and a half ago, I wasn't sure I was even giving a class tonight. But now that I'm here, I'm asking your permission. Is it okay with you if I jump out of order, do something today, and then maybe next week jump back to the topic of Midvar Sheker Tirchak? You okay with it? Yeah. Okay. B'ezrat Hashem. So if you're wondering how we got here because we got here. But worst case, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll watch the shiurim out of order. B'ezrat Hashem. When I'm preparing this section of the laws of Sanhedrin, so what we're in right now is an entire section in which we are preparing the source text. We're going to be sitting now and studying the Rambam laws of Sanhedrin for many, many, many moons. But before we jump into the laws of Sanhedrin, we did a number of introductions. The part of the introductions I'm into right now is trying to take all the different verses that the Rambam is going to use later on and show you in the context of the Torah what they mean, so that we know them in the Torah before we know them from the Rambam. Some of these Pesukim are more broad, some of them are a lot more narrow. And the Pesukim that are next on my list are quite narrow. They're quite specific. And not only are they specific, they're a little bit gory. And usually, I would avoid giving a shiur on just such a topic. But there's too much here for me to skip over it. So we're going to do it together. I'm going to ask you not to run away. If something is too much, we'll talk about it, B'ezrat Hashem. But for right now, I'm going to find myself in the book of Devarim at the end of chapter 21. So it doesn't matter which chumash you have, but all of them should be the same in terms of the Pesukim. We should be in Devarim at the end of chapter 21.
Sorry, can you just repeat where we are?
Devarim at the end of chapter 21.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for interrupting. It's good to hear your voice. So exactly the pasuk 22. The Torah says the following. V'chiyeh v'ish chet, mishpat mavet v'humat. If there's a person who commits a crime that carries the capital offense of death, execution, and now this person is executed, v'talita oto al ha'etz, and you hang that person now on a piece of wood. So what a way to start the season, with the laws of hanging a dead body after we execute them. But I promise you that in this mitzvah, there is chokhmah, there is wisdom that we need to uncover. The Torah continues. But why did I not translate etz as tree? Because it's a piece of wood. Rabbi Chesky, why is it a piece of wood? Why not a tree?
Probably it's easier
Do it with trees. Okay, good. That's going to be an important answer for the shiur today. Lo talin nivlato al ha'etz. Do not leave his body hanging on this wood. Ki kavor tikberenu bayom hahu. But you surely must bury him on that day. Ki kehillat Elohim. Pause. Talui. How you translate this pasuk is going to be. Let me read to you what Art Scroll writes in their Torah. For a hanging person is a curse of God. Okay. V'lo titameh et admatecha, do not defile your land. Asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha nachala, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving to you as an inheritance. So right now you have two mitzvot. Mitzvah number one is good clothes. When you execute a person, mitzvah number one is to hang the body. Very good, to hang the body. Mitzvah number one. Mitzvah number two, it's so one is mitzvah aseh, to do. Mitzvah lo taseh, lo. Very good. Lo talin livlato al ha'etz, not to leave the body hanging overnight. Okay. So two separate mitzvot. And today's shiur is going to be trying to understand why, what, for what purpose. Maybe let's look at Rashi. Yeah. Rashi writes on the pasuk. So if you're in Sefaria, for example, you could just click on the pasuk, click commentaries, and then from there look for Rashi on pasuk 23. Ki kehillat Elohim talui. Zilzulo shel melechu. It's a zilzul, a denigration of the king. Which king? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She'adam asui bidmut diukno v'Yisrael hem banav. Because we are created in the image of God, and Yisrael are the children of God. Mashal shnei achim teomim. Imagine two twin brothers. Sheyu domim ze lazeh. They were identical. So not all twins are identical, but some of them are. Echad nasa melech, ve'echad nitfas listim. V'nitla. One of them became the king, meaning he ascended to the highest ranks of society. And the other one was an overachiever in crime and was caught for horrible crimes. And he was hung. Kol haro'eh oto, anybody who sees him, omer, hamelech talui. The king has been hung. So tzivah hamelech v'horiduhu. So the king sent out a notice, hey, take him down. I don't want people to think that I was the one hanging up there. Kol kilala shebamikra, lashon hakel v'zilzul. Como v'hu kilala nikilala nimretzet. The word curse is really the word degradation. To put someone down. To disrespect somebody. And therefore, in this context, we say that the leaving of the body on the tree is disrespecting the creator of the universe, because if man was created in God's image, and God's image is hanging on a tree, on a piece of wood, then what do we see from here? People might think that God is hanging on a piece of wood. However, for some of you, this might be very rich, because there is an entire religion of people who believe that God is hanging on a piece of wood. But that is something that we can talk about at a different time. It is mamash not the purpose of shul today, but something interesting to think about. Let's look at the Rambam for a minute. If you have your Rambams in front of you, if not, you can open up Sefaria, Laws of Sanhedrin. Chapter 15. And actually, if we're jumping around between books, let's jump somewhere else first. It's okay. I don't want to make you jump too much. Let's look here. Chapter 15, Laws of Sanhedrin. And this chapter is dedicated entirely to the 4 ways in which the Beit Din executes criminals. This is not my favorite chapter of the Mishnah Torah. I mean, I always thought it wasn't just my favorite chapter of the Mishnah Torah, but when I was preparing these halachot, I realized that Rabbi Chaim Levin Halevi, simply in his book Dvar Mishpat, records these halachot that keeps moving. He has not one word of commentary on this entire section. But I'll read this to you anyways. We'll do with it what we need to. Ketzad mitzvat haniskalin. How do we fulfill the mitzvah of stoning a person to death? רחוק מבית הסקילה 4 אמות, מפשיטין את המחויב סקילה בגדיו. A little bit away from the place in which we execute the person, we undress them. ומכסין ערוותו מלפניו, and we cover their body from the front, their private parts. But it says that he must be naked. The Rambam explains in the commentary in the Mishnah that someone is called naked when even some of their body is exposed. A little bit of a person's body being exposed is considered nakedness. I can't tell you anything specific because I intentionally don't speak about tzniut so much in front of cameras. But Mori Harav, when people would come to the shiur, men, we're talking about men, correct? So we're not picking on women here. He would say, "You're coming to the beach, the gym, or the Beit Midrash? How are you coming here? Why are you naked?" I said, "Not naked, but a person could be naked even if they're not naked." Then האישה נסקלת ערומה, אלא בחלוק אחד. A woman is not stoned naked, rather she's wearing some kind of robe, some clothing. Okay, I don't want to do details of how we kill a person. Let's go to the part. Let's skip to the good part. The hanging. Look at Halakha 6. מצוות עשה לתלות את המגדף ועובד עבודה זרה. There are 2 people who commit crimes who we hang their bodies after we kill them. One is the megadef. What is a megadef? Someone who curses the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And the second person is an Oved Avodah Zarah. Shneimar ki kilat Elohim talui. Harei megadef amur. ובעובד עבודה זרה נאמר, את אדוני הוא מגדף. By the one who worships a foreign deity, that person is said about them that he is also a megadef. And therefore we know that an oved avodah zara is a type of megadef. Vaish nitle, ve'en haisha nitlet. And a man's body is hung, but a woman's body is not hung. Shneemar v'chiyeh be'ish chet, ve'talita oto. Twice it speaks in the masculine. V'chiyeh be'ish chet, one, a man will sin, and the second, ve'talita oto, and you will hang him. Our rabbis infer from here that this refers only to men and not to women. Ketzad mitzvat hanitlin. So how do we fulfill this mitzvah? Achar shesoklin oto, after we execute him by stoning, mashki'in et hakora ba'aretz, we stick a post in the ground, v'ha'etz yotze mimena, and a piece of wood comes out from that piece of wood. So you can imagine something like an L, but upside down. A long post and a stick that comes up, another post that comes out of it. Umakifin shtei yadav zo lazo, and we bind both the hands of the corpse together. V'tole oto samuch l'shkiat hachama, and we hang him by those hands. So don't think the way that the Christians imagine hanging a person. Here we're talking about a person's hands are together and they're hung off of this post like that. We put them up there just before sunset. Umatirin oto miyad, and immediately we take him down. So we leave execution almost until the end of the day. Why?
To minimize how long the corpse is actually hanging.
To minimize how long the person is hanging there. We can hang him in the morning. You're allowed to. The whole day you can leave a person there. But we don't. We minimize the bare minimum that a person can be there, put him up, take him down right away. Umatirin oto miyad, we remove him immediately. Ve'im lan, and if we leave the body there, ovrin alav belo ta'aseh, we violate a lo ta'aseh commandment, shneemar, like it says, lo talin nivlato al ha'etz. You're not allowed to leave him there on the wood. Umitzvat aseh, and it's an imperative commandment, likbor et kol harugei bedin biyom hariga, to bury all of those that are executed by the bedin on the day of their execution. Shneemar, ki kavor tikberenu bayom hahu, because you surely must bury him on that day. Halakha continues. V'lo harugei bedin bilvad. I feel like right now? I'll tell you what I feel like right now. We once had a rabbinic convention in Midrash Sephardi in Yerushalayim, in our yeshiva. It lasts a whole week, from Sunday till the end of the week. And the topic of the rabbinic convention was stem cell death, brain death versus heart death, when we can harvest organs, halachically. Day 1, day 2, day 3, Hara Peretz stood up, took away the microphone and left. What happened? He said, how much can you guys talk about death? It's not normal to spend so much time talking about death. I feel already that I'm speaking too much about these halachot and I'm not so excited about it. But allow me to read a few more halachot with you and we'll take it somewhere. We're going to take it somewhere. It's okay. And not only those who are executed by the Bet Adin. We were sitting here on Kids Club, Shabbat afternoon, the kids study Torah with me after lunch before we break for Shiur. And we usually learn Hilchot Shabbat together, but this week they asked about Hilchot Halloween. And so, being that the Shulchan Aruch didn't yet have the section on Hilchot Halloween, I spoke to them in general. I'm not here to tell you guys what you should do. I'm telling you, from my perspective, my Kehillat, my children asked me this question, is what I share with them. To trick or treat and not trick or treat. We have enough candies here to last people until they graduate university. Have enough candies in the Beit. We can get a whole life, not have to go knocking anybody else's doors. But the one question is, the greatest mitzvah in the Torah, is to live. V'chai b'hem. We have a mitzvah to live. That's why, with the exception of a few very specific mitzvot, we always choose to live even over observance of the Torah. There is nothing worse in our tradition than death. We touch a dead body, we are timeim, we cannot enter the Midrash. We come in contact with the dead body in our own lives, we must sit shiva, we must remove ourselves from society. Any type of contact, tumat met, the tumah that comes from a dead body, everybody here is a tameh met, everybody, even if you've never touched a dead body before. Because tumat met is a never-ending tumah. One person touches a dead body, and they shake somebody's hand in the Beit HaKnesset, and they shake somebody else's hand, and they touch and then they, by the end of the day, every single person is a tameh met. How? Because tumat met, the death, is such a horrible thing that it is a devastating reality in the world, but it is something that our Torah and our Chachamim deal with very severely. And when you look around the world that glorifies death, I've had neighbors my whole life, but this year my neighbors decided, I guess their kids hit a certain age, I came to my car and I see the next door to my house, they opened the cemetery. There are graves in the front yard. Now, obviously not real graves, but they decorated their house. Like, how are we going to decorate for the holiday? Graves. Another neighbor of mine has a bloody leg hanging out of his front door. A leg. Cut off, hanging out of his front door. Another neighbor has a skeleton higher than their house, taller than their house. A skeleton. The people dressed up on Friday night, we walked home from the Beit HaKnesset, vampires, Hashem Yishmo, what you see over here. And then you ask yourself a question, how could Am Yisrael have anything to do with a culture that glorifies death? That is okay with death? That thinks it's cute to associate candies with the most horrific scenes in the world? They can do what they want. I told our Kehillat, we give out candies on Purim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved our life. We celebrate life. Chanukah, people give out chocolate coins. We were supposed to die. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us life. All of the things that we do to celebrate life. A person goes to a cemetery. People think it's a holy thing. Let's go pray in a cemetery. Let's go find all the dead rabbis we can find. Let's go over there. When you leave the cemetery, what do you do when you leave the cemetery? Outside of every Jewish cemetery, what is there?
Wash your hands.
A sink to wash your hands. How do you wash your hands? The same way, like when you leave the restroom. That's where you go to pray? You decide to go to the place that you have to wash your hands in Kehillat Yadayim when you leave it? Do you have no Beit Knesset where you live? Go choose a Beit Knesset. I made it all the way to Europe. I'm in Warsaw. Good. Go to the Beit Knesset. There's a Beit Knesset, I'm sure. Go find it. In the Beit Knesset, Sifrei Torah. There are Sidurim. There are people. Why go to a place where you have to do Kehillat Yadayim afterwards? What's the point? Okay. Hilchot Halloween are over. V'lo harugei bedin bevad. Not only those that are executed by the Beit Adin, says the Rambam, ela kol hamelin et meto. Anybody who holds back a person's burial after they die, over alav belo taseh, violates a prohibition of lo taseh. I'm afraid to teach us halakha in America. I actually don't know the situation in New York. But I can tell you that in San Diego, I'm thinking right now out loud, I don't think in San Diego I have ever officiated a funeral of a person who died the same day. Ever. I don't think I've ever heard of a person who got buried in the same day. A person can die on Monday, and maybe Wednesday or Thursday or Friday will be the funeral. Somehow, all the people that don't eat gummy bears and all the people that don't eat rice on Pesach, all those people that are busy being so religious, they couldn't figure out yet a system in San Diego where a person dies and according to halakha, they get buried the same day. They couldn't figure it out. Something here doesn't make sense. I hope that in New York it's different. In
It's
Yerushalayim.
not the same over here, at least from my experience.
It's not the same?
Not the same.
What does it mean?
Very same day. The longest I've ever heard of was someone who passed away on a Friday night or on Shabbat. They waited until after Shabbat to do burial. There's the longest I've ever heard. People here usually bury the same day.
Very good.
Unless the state, unless there's like a. What I've heard, the only time that it doesn't happen is if there's something that like is where the state is meddling in or preventing it. For other people, it's like the only person in my personal life that passed away that did not have a funeral the same day was my grandfather, because he passed away in Aruba, and the Peruvian government held his body for over a week. So my father was like in limbo land for like. He passed away like a week before Hanukkah, and his funeral was on Hanukkah.
Let me ask you this. Can I ask around the room, is that the experience that most people have outside of San Diego?
I know for me, what I experienced was usually at least within 12 hours, the same day.
12 hours. Do they do funerals at night?
They are at least within 24 hours.
At least.
I never recall really at night. It's usually at days. If someone's with at night, then do the next morning.
But in Yerushalayim, we're very particular. We don't even do that. We do funerals at 1 o'clock in the morning. We shouldn't need to know. But here, I'm telling you, Mamash, since I moved here, I've tried. It's like nobody could care. You're lucky if 2 or 3 days after a person dies. You're lucky. So, we have things to fix. It's so bad, I'll tell you, so bad, the situation here in San Diego, that I say it in any opportunity that I can, even when it makes people upset. But I'm going to say now also here, anybody who passes away here, but I'm talking about myself, here in San Diego, they should ask in their will not to be buried here. Everything here that has to do with burial, everything that has to do with burial here is done incorrectly. Kimat everything. Helino lichvodo. What if they hold back a person from being buried for their own honor? Now, this is sometimes used to say, let's wait for the family to come, maybe by state funerals, let's let the other dignitaries come. If you remember, probably most recent Jewish history, you might remember Shimon Peres, when he passed away, that they waited a number of days for presidents and all kinds of other people to come to Israel. Okay, that was part of this conversation. The Rambam gives very specific examples why we wait. Lehavilo aron v'tachrichin, let's say to arrange for a coffin, to arrange for burial shrouds, those kind of things. En over alav. We don't violate this prohibition if the reason why the people are waiting are in order to make funeral arrangements. And from here you can judge everybody in San Diego properly. Clearly it takes 3 days to make funeral arrangements, and therefore that's how everybody there is not violating halakha. But I came to speak about halakha number 9. Because halakha number 9 is going to answer halakha number 6.
Rabbi,
Yes.
this is Naomi. In light of what you said, is it meritorious for us to make our own funeral arrangements to the extent that we're able to, so there's much less need for any kind of delays when the time comes?
That's a fantastic question. Harabbanit, one of her rebbes, Karlin Stolen Hasidim, they call him the Detroiter Rebbe because he died in Detroit. He didn't live there. But he was traveling in Detroit and he passed away there. And when they opened his suitcase, they found that he had already brought his own burial shrouds with him. Clearly, he assumed that the time was near and he made those preparations. I think that people are afraid to talk about this part of life. People have a fear, and the fear makes sense. People have an irrational fear of death. Everybody's going to die. Everybody's going to die. There's no such thing as a person who doesn't die. So you can fight it, and you can hate it, and you can argue with it, but at the end of the day, it happens. And so it's a silly thing not to talk about it. At the end of the day, you ask for long life. So people should, in the zechut of the fact they take care of their burial properly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless them with a long life. What could be? These things are complicated. How many times does it happen? I don't know what it costs in New York, but in San Diego today, it could cost between $25,000 and $35,000 to get buried in a Jewish cemetery. And I cannot even begin to tell you the amount of families who someone passes away and the children can't afford to bury them. They can't afford it. But sometimes even worse. Sometimes the children don't care to do a proper Jewish burial. But fine, how much does cremation cost? How much does throwing them? How much does it cost somewhere else? And then you get in very complicated situations. It would be very wise for a person who can to plan as much as possible this part of life. I would say if a person wants to listen to me, do whatever you can to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Period. Doesn't matter where. It could be in the by the trash can in the airport of Eretz Yisrael, but it should be in Eretz Yisrael. That's what should be more important there than any other place in the world. Halavai, if people listen when after 120 for me, they'll take me to Eretz Yisrael. Halavai. And Tolin,
It should,
huh?
if the burial is going to be delayed, like Israel, but it's even longer, so you can't get a flight right away. Is that still practical? Do that next Israel, then grab it right away?
Now you're pushing my buttons. In my humble opinion, the benefit of being buried in Eretz Yisrael far outweighs everything else. But the old minhag of the Sfaradim was that they would bury a person right away here. They would wait for the bodies to decompose, and then they would gather the bones and take them to Eretz Yisrael a year later. But not always. Sometimes they would put bodies on a wagon for 12 months till they made it to Eretz Yisrael. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If I keep talking about this topic, my mother is going to call me after the shiur and get upset at me. So I want to respect my mother and not to talk so much about dying. But everyone should live a long and good and healthy life. What I'm telling you though, kavod of a person is not to leave them out, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about right now. This is where I'm trying to get us to. I didn't see what time it was. Says Rabbeinu Rambam, "En tolin alilan hamchuba lakarka el ala talush." We don't hang a person's body on a tree that is attached to the ground, rather a piece of wood that is disconnected. Kedei shelo yeh mechusar kitzitza, so that we don't need to still cut it down when it's done. Why do you have to cut it down? Shehaetz shenitla alav nikbar imo, because the tree that a person was hung on is buried with him. Why? Shelo yeh lo zikaron ra, so there will not be a bad memory. Meaning, v'yomru, they will say, Ze ha'etz shenitla alav ploni. This is the tree that so-and-so was buried on. V'chen ha'even sheniskal ba, v'ha'saif shehareg bo ha'neherag, v'ha'sudarin shechonkin behen. All of the things that we use in executing a person in the Sanhedrin, all of them, hakol nikbarin b'tvusat ha'neherag. All of them are buried in the 4 amot around the person who's killed. Aval lo b'kever atzmo ela b'tzido. Not exactly in his grave, but somewhere around him. The halacha is that a met, koneh, dead person acquires the full amot around them, and therefore somewhere in those 4 amot we bury all of the devices of execution. Why? So we already heard what Rashi said. Rashi told us, because the king, he becomes disgraced when we see the body that is similar to him hanging there. If you look in the Rambam, Sefer HaMitzvot, I don't know if you have access quickly to Sefer HaMitzvot. Mitzvot lo ta'aseh, 66. Rabbeinu Rambam writes, Ha'azhara shehuzharnu, this thing that we have been warned, milahaniach et talui lalun al etzo, not to leave this person hanging there, כדי שלא תבוא על ידי כך ברכת השם במחשבה כאשר ייראה. We are trying to avoid not disrespect to the person who's hanging. We're trying to avoid disrespect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Someone is going to see the dead body hanging there, and they're going to ask, what did this person do wrong that they're hung? And what's the answer? What did they do wrong that they're hung? The only 2 people who get hung. Who are they? The Megadef and the Oved Avodah Zarah. Who's a Megadef? Very good. So now what are you going to do? Start talking about how they cursed HaKadosh Baruch Hu. or how they worshipped Avodah Zarah. And you're going to now lead yourself into a place where you are thinking thoughts that you shouldn't be thinking about. And because of this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want this person hanging there too long. That's also seemingly why the Bet Adin minimizes the amount of time that a person is hanging there. It also is why everything that is associated with the execution of a person is put away, so nobody will continue to talk about things that are negative. If you're at that thought with me now, does anyone know any cases in the Tanakh in which we hang bodies? I'm thinking Nevi'im. Pam, I'm waiting for you to unmute yourself.
Okay, I forgot to say, Mishpat, where it says, Hopa Otam Neged Shemesh, when Moshe and then they killed the people who worship Baal Thor.
Okay, but jump with me to Nevi'im. I want definitely Nevi'im because I want to show something maybe that Rashi is saying that we can get around.
Well, Haman and his 10 sons.
Okay, but they're executed through hanging, and that wasn't us. We don't execute like that. Shchem, what about Shchem, Imam? I'm in the Nevi'im. I want Nevi'im. I can think of two places, at least. One of them which brought many, many people to join Am Yisrael. Do you remember which one that was?
Oh yeah, when they hung some of the descendants of Shaul who were responsible for killing the Gibeonim.
I'm making a hashtag, be like Pam. If she's going to tell me that I'm embarrassing her, that's okay. But that's exactly one story I'm thinking about, the Gibeonim. When the Gibeonim demand the most cruel thing, ultimately it gets them thrown out of the Jewish people because of this behavior. That they demand revenge on the children of King Shaul, and David HaMelech gives in. We find that right afterwards, over 150,000 people join the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael. For some of you who were there in my shiur on Shabbat, so my parents, Richard, Rachel, I don't know who else here, Nelly was there, a few other people here in my shiur on Shabbat in the writings of Rabbi Moshe, you'll remember that they didn't necessarily even convert to Judaism, but they all came to the Jewish people seemingly after this point. What was the purpose of that hanging? I shouldn't take this tangent because it will hurt. It's a hurtful part of our history. I still don't forgive the Gibeonim. But the Gibeonim claim that the royal family had harmed them. Who are the Gibeonim? The people that deceived Yoshua to join the Jewish people. Now, interestingly, Rabbanit has a whole shiur on this about the obligation of a government to sustain its constituents financially. When you have opinions that you develop on food stamps, on government housing, on Medicaid, all of those opinions that you have because you listen to the guys with the small kippot on podcasts and talk shows, but you never learn them from the Torah. So in the Torah, we have texts that show us whether or not, or to which extent we are obligated to sustain the people that are inside of our countries. So for example, many opinions believe that Shaul HaMelech did kill some Gibeonim, but for the most part, our Chachamim do not believe that Shaul HaMelech killed Gibeonim. Rather, what did he do? Who did he kill?
The Kohanim.
Right. When the Kohanim, why did he kill the Kohanim?
Because supposedly they hid David HaMelech.
So because they hid David, he accused them of hiding David HaMelech, so he wipes out the city of the Kohanim. Now the Kohanim were those who employed the Gibeonim, because the Gibeonim were given a job by Yoshua. I mean, he absorbs them into the Jewish nation, and he makes sure they're also taken care of financially. How so? They're going to be water carriers and wood choppers for the Mikdash. And therefore, if their employers are dead, there's now no one to pay them. From here, Rabbi Chaim David Halevi sees something very important, that when a person loses their job, They lose their ability to support themselves. They are in a position in which they feel like they are dead. Something should awaken inside of a person that entire segments of our people think that it is normal not to have any kind of meaningful employment. And the part that they don't even begin to understand is the death that they experience regularly, that they don't even think that it's that, but it's that. We're seeing zombies. But for a different shiur, on a different day. I don't want to take another tangent. So these Givonim lose their employment. For those of you who are here on Shabbat, I told you that the Givonim is not the first time that this happens. Yehoshua learned this halakha from Moshe Rabbeinu. When did Moshe Rabbeinu accept Givonim? Not Givonim, really. When did he do a similar thing?
No, it was
Atem nitzavim hayom kulechem. Who's there?
everyone.
Someone has a chumash in front of you? Open up Parshat Nitzavim. Very good, Rachel. Very good. Kol ish Yisrael, right? And then what does it say? Very good. From your wood chopper till your water carrier. No, that's what it says there. Chachamim, right there. If you want to see it's in the Gemara, but for example, the Rambam quotes it over there also. That these are leftovers of the 7 nations of the Canaanim that Moshe Rabbeinu accepts into the nation of Israel. And he gives them a job to chop wood and to carry water. So when Yehoshua is met by the Givonim, he does exactly what his teacher taught him to do. Now, curiously, Rabbi Eliezer ben Amozeg is of the opinion that these people did not actually convert to Judaism. They're not Jews. Rather, they are believers in one God, Yireh Hashem, who joined the Jewish nation as citizens, but not necessarily as co-religionists. But that's for my Shabbat class, not for my Monday evening class. Yeah, we can talk more about Givonim later. I'm thinking, though, of another story in the Mikra, especially in Nevi'im, where somebody is hung. I'll give you a hint. Yehoshua. Who does Yehoshua hang? Wait, I can't hear. Oh, so we have the king of Ai. Yes? Okay, now I guess I have to be like Richard too. The king of Ai, that he hangs him on the tree, it says in the book of Yoshua chapter 8, until the sun sets. And then he takes him down. Rabbi David Shalush, the chief rabbi of Netanya, in his commentary in the Torah, Or Chadash, he says you learn something interesting from this. The fact that Yehoshua takes down the body of the king of Ai, you can't possibly accuse Yehoshua of thinking that the king of Ai was Jewish. What does Rashi say? Because all human beings are created in the image of God, and we are his sons, then we can't hang our bodies on trees. What do you learn from this story of Yehoshua?
That if you're going to follow Rashi's logic, then that's a statement is applicable to all humanity.
All humanity, not just the Jewish people. Yehoshua teaches us that even the king of Ai, we take down his body. But it's for sure not to respect the king of Ai. For sure, that's not the reason. Rather, what the Rambam is telling you, that when a person sees this, they're going to begin to disgrace the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now we have to ask ourselves, what does that really mean? Rabbi David Shalush suggests that when a person sees a decomposing body, they're seeing something that was created in the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they see it falling apart. And that's a very jarring thing to see. To see a person die for a moment is one thing, but to watch a body decompose hanging there, but there are some traditions like that. Are you familiar with those? There's some places in India where they put out bodies, they keep bringing them back. Every year on their anniversary, they have dinner with them. You know what I'm talking about? There's some cultures where they put the bodies out in the fields for the birds to eat them, and then they powder their bones. All kinds of cultures. It's not just that. Am Yisrael has a prohibition against doing anything like that. Anything that has to do with watching a person's body decompose. Why? Let me quote you from Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg. And it pains me to tell you that there is nowhere in the world you're going to be able yet to buy the book of Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg on the Devarim. But I'm grateful to Sefaria for digitizing the text, which was until now almost impossible to read, and for putting the text on the pasuk. So if you actually click in Sefaria on that pasuk and you look for the commentary called Em Lamikra, that's the book that the Syrian rabbis burned and the rabbis of Jerusalem banned. So Em Lamikra, it's here. Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg says something beautiful. Yeah, but only until Vaikra. He didn't do Bamidbar and Devarim yet. Not that I saw. Says Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg, Kehillat Elohim talui, that the curse of God is now there hanging. Kol davar nifsad. Everything that is perishable. And forgive me, the Hebrew of Rabbi Amozeg is a little cryptic for me. Uvioter me'amurkavim u'va'alei chaim, all living creatures especially. V'alakol, and more of all of the living creatures that decomposes is the human being, hanichbedet, v'chaviva mikulam. Humanity is greater than all other living creatures. Yavo leharher b'ashgachato yitbarach u'v'chochmat hasidur hativ'i. Every time we see death, we see destruction, the natural inclination of a person, says Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg, is to start to doubt the divine order of things. I see death, and the first question I ask, is there really a God in the world? That's everybody's reaction, even though we all know that people die. The more horrific a death is, the more we question whether HaKadosh Baruch Hu really runs this planet or he doesn't. Says Rabbi ben Amozeg that seeing a person there makes us, if the body was there hanging on the wood, that we would begin to disrespect the Creator because we see if God created all things and now we see that his divine order is crumbling, we have no choice but to question HaKadosh Baruch Hu's involvement in the world. And he says something fascinating. V'zohi hatuma hamiyucheset el hamet. And when we talk about impurity of dead bodies, we're not talking about some magical impurity that passes from thing to thing, says Rabbi Amozeg. We're talking about klomar kilkul haseder ha'elohi, the destruction of divine order. When the world begins to fall apart in front of our eyes, the first thing that begins to be challenged is our faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's natural. It's normal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tries to minimize this as much as possible. You know, he goes here into Vico. Vico, I spoke about him again on Shabbat. Vico was a professor in Naples University. He was if Voltaire, Yemach Shemo V'zichro, was one of the most horrific thinkers in the world, hated Jews in a pathological way, then Vico was one of the more beautiful Italian, wasn't Jewish, beautiful Italian thinkers. Chacham Fa'ur has entire articles dedicated to Vico and his theology and how really Sephardic Chachamim were those who maintained Vico's ideas in the world. We discussed the writings of Vico here maybe 3 or 4 summers ago. We spent the summer here a little bit touching on the writings of Vico. But essentially, says Rabbi ben Amozeg, that when the human body, which is the highest form of creation in God's image, that becomes disgraced, then ultimately it reflects this whole breakdown of the divine order of the world. And it's not only then an affront to human honor, so it's not that Kadosh Baruch Hu is worried about the dignity, it's kavod hamet, the dignity of the body that is there, but it seems to be some kind of concern about the dignity of the creator of the world, who also in some way is profaned when man who bears the image of God begins to decompose in front of the world. And that When you go back to the Midrash that Rashi is quoting, but the king who has a twin, and the king's twin brother's body is hanging there, and it disrespects the king, says Rabbi Abraham Moseg, this has so much depth to it. Because when we see problems in the world, we begin to question HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. And that's why, if you look in the book of Bereshit, can we look together in the book of Bereshit? Open a Chumash, chapter 9. Chapter 9, Pasuk 6. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is rebuilding the world with Noah. And he's telling him, Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam damo yishafech ki b'tzelem Elohim asat ha'adam. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of Adonai he made man. In other words, to kill a human being is to assault the divine image that is inside of them. And even when, by the way, there are some opinions here on the rabbinic commentaries that say that really when Elohim, the curse of the Elohim is not God, rather it's Elohim. Who else are called Elohim? Judges. So people will come to curse the judges for executing this person. Says Rabbi Abraham Moseg, you can't possibly accept such a explanation because the judges are listening to the Creator. Which kind of person is going to curse the judges for listening to the Creator? That's not plausible. Rather, it's the body that is hanging there. That even the criminal has inside of them a Tzelem Elohim, are created in the image of God. Even the non-Jew, king of Ai, who deserved to be killed by Yoshua, even he, inside of him, contains some goodness. And when we watch goodness deteriorate and leave this world, it leaves all of us in shock. By the way, Rabbi Abraham Moseg quoted Vico. The reason he quoted Vico, because Vico says, let me find the quote from Vico. Vico says that all ancient nations, no matter which nation you go to, all ancient nations believe the following. I'm quoting from his book, I don't know how to say it, New Science. In Italian, it's called Scienza Nuova. I don't speak Italian. He writes, Vico, souls wander restlessly upon the earth, circling around their unburied bodies. Rabbi Abraham Moseg says it's something you find in Kabbalah also, and you know that Rabbi Abraham Moseg is in Mekubal, that in general, until a person goes back into the earth, there is unrest in the world. What is the unrest that all the ancient civilizations and then Kabbalah talk about? The unrest before a person is buried is the unrest of this humanity needing to deal with a concept called death. It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable to see that though we know a person comes from the earth and will return to the earth, but we know that part of that coming from the earth was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's image is inside of this person. And now we have to watch some part of divinity dissipate from the world, and that is a very difficult thing to experience. Rabbi Moseg tells you all of the laws of Tumah, of how to rehabilitate oneself after approaching death, whether it's touching, whether it's experiencing, all of those things are connected, if you look deep enough, into the fear, into the shaking up of a person's world order when they have to experience the disintegration of a being that was created in the image of God. To see that go back into the earth is the most jarring experience. And therefore nothing can rest until that is removed and all things connected to the deceased are removed. We talked about Halloween. The fact that in the culture around us, there are people that will burn the body of their deceased and then put it in a little pot on top of the fireplace is not normal. Forget the person resting in peace, but when will you rest in peace? When will you accept that death is something you must move on from? You can't live a whole life in a world that God is crumbling always, but rather in a world that is about life and about rebirth and about growth. And so even in the worst, most morbid mitzvot, like hanging a body, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to preserve not just the dignity of humanity, but the dignity of divinity itself. So I feel like it's not a Shabbat class, so maybe I shouldn't expand this more than I already did. But maybe I could tell you something that I started with, and maybe I should end there. Essentially, when a person is able to murder somebody else, it comes from a deep-seated belief in them that the person in front of them is not created in the image of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. If I see another person and I see the divinity that created them, then I will never dare to take their life. By the way, in the case of the Bedin, unless said divinity, the divine, said to take their life. That's why the Dayanim will do it. But to murder somebody, that's not normal. Maybe when I told you earlier the greatest mitzvah in the world is to live, I'm sure that some of you had the question in your mind. What is he talking about? There are some mitzvot we give up our life for. Like not killing other people. Or like not worshipping avodah zarah. Or like not taking another man's wife. That's true, no? There are mitzvot greater than life itself. I'm arguing to you the other way around. If you do not believe in the divinity of a person, then you can kill him. If you do not believe in the divinity of a person, then you can take his wife. If you do not believe in the divine, then all the most horrible things can happen. To quote Voltaire, who I just mentioned earlier, the Rabbi likes this quote a lot. Voltaire said, I'm paraphrasing, if you can cause people to believe absurdities, you can then cause them to commit atrocities. The most absurd thing in the world is to believe that this world has no creator. And when a person can believe that there is no order to this world, then I can do whatever I want. And you and I live in a world where people do whatever they want because there is no judge and there is no judgment and there is no God and there is no creator. I am the creator. I am God. I do whatever I want. Who are you to tell me otherwise? And now that I'm telling this to you, perhaps you can begin to understand that the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed because of 3 averot. The same 3 that we must give up our lives for. You see, at the end of the day, it's not just that a person who doesn't believe in God is capable of killing somebody else because they don't see the God in them. The most horrific part of a person who doesn't believe in God is they don't believe in the divinity of themselves. Gilui Arayot, it's not just taking another man's wife. Gilui Arayot is throwing oneself into sexual depravity, is that a word in English? Into a place of deprivation because I have no self-esteem. Because I don't think that I am God's gift to humanity. Because I don't understand that a Kadosh Baruch Hu created me as a special, unique individual who has a purpose in this world. And when I can walk around the street and I can, by the time I turn 30 or 40, I can bring it to my bed, and I'm speaking cleanly, 100, 200, 300 people. Forget the fact that I don't care about their divinity. What it tells me is I don't care about my own. Where's my self-respect? Where's my dignity? Where's my walking around with my head held high? And so when I look at this mitzvah here, and it seems like a random halakha, not to hang a body overnight, I hope that one thing that I've shared with you today is that deeply embedded inside of this halakha is the recognition for the judges, for the people of Israel, for the criminal themselves, for those who are observing this horrific scene, that all of this comes from a tremendous imbalance in the natural order of the world. Had this criminal known HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they wouldn't have been here. If these people didn't listen to the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they would not execute this person. We would never take another person's life. But now that we took their life, we have a biblical obligation to hang them. Let's minimize that destruction as much as possible. Lo talin, don't leave the body hanging there. Because we didn't come to create more chaos in society. We came to bring more divinity into society. Sometimes you have to destroy evil. But sometimes the destruction of evil, if it does not happen swiftly, it causes for many, many people to doubt whether it's good in the first place. I think, and I'm saying this now as I'm sharing with you, that in the United States of America, one of the values of this country is that people have the right, someone can quote the proper phrase for me, to a swift and speedy, what's the phrase? It's been a while since I was in school, Chaver. Nobody wants to help me today. The Sixth Amendment to the Constitution. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial. Speedy. Speedy doesn't mean 3 years waiting over there till the bail. Doesn't mean what you see now in the world. But that the wisdom behind here is sometimes we have to deal with criminals. But the whole dealing with criminals itself can be problematic. There's a Hasidic teaching. I once had a Hasidic historian in my house. His name is Rabbi Abish Shaar. He's from my wife's Hasidut. He lives in Yerushalayim. He came here once to a convention of Jewish academics. And he was talking to me about two different Hasiduyot. For the life of me, I cannot tell you which. I don't remember which one was which. I'm sure the Rabbi is here. She can tell you. But there's a pasuk. David HaMelech says, "Sur mera v'aseh tov." Leave evil and do good. And you find two different schools of thought about how to do teshuvah. Some of the people who do teshuvah spend the rest of their life thinking about the things they did wrong. And some of the great spiritual masters say if you spend the rest of your life thinking about what you did wrong, then you've never really stopped doing wrong yet. Because you're still there. You're still obsessed with all of the evil that you did before. If it's really behind you and you did teshuvah, so you have to sur mira, you have to leave the evil behind, v'aseh tov, and move into a reality that is now good. Whatever bad was inside of you yesterday, did you do teshuvah for it? It's gone. It's what our Chachamim mean in the Talmud when they say, if you see a Talmid Chacham who did an Averah during the day, don't think about him doing it at night. Why? Because by nighttime, for sure, he's already a new person. Who says, I know some Talmidei Chachamim that are criminals also in the day and in the nighttime. Then we're not talking about a Talmid Chacham, correct? A Talmid Chacham is a definition of a person who's constantly growing, who's constantly trying to improve themselves. If you see them that yesterday they did something wrong, the assumption must be that today they're not there anymore. You wouldn't call them a Talmid Chacham if not. It couldn't be. All of us deserve to be in that category of Chachamim who are constantly improving ourselves, and therefore the things we did wrong yesterday should not be held against us today, because we truly are different people. The same thing on a much larger level. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asking for us to eradicate evil, but to do so swiftly. Chevra, since you and I last learned Torah together, and I'm going to be very conscious of avoiding any explicit politics. Nothing has distressed me more than the way in which we have chosen to end the war with our enemies. Not that we have chosen, the way in which we have chosen. When I spoke to you in New York, the week after October 7th, 2023, we spoke about how are we different and the purpose of Jewish warfare. In my greatest nightmares, I couldn't imagine a reality like we're in right now. It wasn't even, you'd have told me then that we might end up where we are today. I wouldn't believe you. I would say, Chaz v'shalom, don't speak Lashon Hara about us. But we're there and we're so far worse than we think. But one thing I did notice, I noticed that I have a certain neighbor. And she had an Israeli, not Jewish, she had an Israeli flag outside of her house. And it was the kind of neighbor I didn't think would have an Israeli flag. Let's just say from all the other flags she has in her front yard, I didn't assume that she would be standing with Israel. That was not my assumption. She had a flag for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. She had an Israeli flag in her front yard. And then it disappeared. And then it disappeared. Because sometimes you have to know how to fight evil just before sunset and then take down the body right away. Sometimes you have to realize that if you In Arabic, there's a word. If you schlep too long, if you drag things out forever, sometimes you already become the reason why there's more chaos in the world. And I just walk away from this mitzvah saying, I didn't plan to speak about this one today because really I'm supposed to be somewhere else. But maybe if we're here in this mitzvah, I was really going to end my shiur now. Would you give me maybe 5 more minutes to share 2 more halachot with you? Can I? I'm concerned about your time. For those of you in New York, it's late.
It's not even 10 o'clock yet.
Okay, I know, but it got dark like 10 hours ago. You understand? So I'm 2 halachot off the top of my head that I felt connected to this. Really, I should end here. Maybe I should make a second clip. At the end of the day, the Torah's prohibition of hanging a body has little to do with the person who's being hung, and the reaction, more to do with the reaction of the people to seeing that body hung. Correct? There's a Gemara. The Gemara says something fascinating. In Masechet Sotah. I read this to you once many years ago. I just don't know if it was in this class or a different class. If you're in Masechet Sotah, you're going to be in page 22a, Chav Bet Amun Aleph. Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis taught. Betulat Salyanit, a young girl who prayed, Ve'almana Shovavit, and a neighborly widow, I'm just translating like they say here, Ve'katan shelo kalu lo chodashav, and a young one whose months are not complete, Harei elu mevale olam. These are the destroyers of the world. Okay, the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Lamanu yirat chet mi betula. We learn yirat chet, the fear of sin, from a young girl. A betula doesn't mean a little girl, but somebody who's, let's say, around the age of 12. I'm going to tell you, maybe, if I had to tell you like that. The Gemara explains, what does Rabbi Yochanan mean? The Rabbi Yochanan shama'a lehahi betula. Rabbi Yochanan, he heard once a certain young girl. The nafla apa, the kamra, that she fell on her face. That's the way the Jewish people pray. Yes? To fall on their face. The Ashkenazim who do tachanunim on their face, keep doing it. She fell on her face and said, but not like this, okay? No, not like that. Like actual fall on your face. Ribono Shalom, Master of the Universe, Barata Gan Eden uVarata Gehenom. You created Gan Eden and you created Gehenom. Barata Tzadikim uVarata Reshaim. You created righteous people and you created evil people. Yehi Ratzon milfanecha. May be your will, Adonai, shelo yikashlu bi bnei Adam. That people should not stumble because of me. What do you know from here? Clearly, this woman is very beautiful. And what is she worried about? That when she walks in the streets, other people will do averot because of her. In their mind, even. Now, a number of questions that come out of this sugya, but the one that I want to focus on right now, Moya Rav always quote the Chidah. The Chidah said, so if it wasn't for this, Rabbi Yochanan would not know that you should have fear of sin. I mean, that's what he learned from this girl. What was so special about what this girl did? That I learned Yirat Chet from this young girl. What was so special? Let me tell you what Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad, the Ben Ish Chai, writes in his commentary here. Ben Yehoyada. It appears to me with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help. HaKavana, the meaning of this text, Lulei Zot, if it was not for this story, לא היינו יודעים שצריך האדם לדאוג ולהיות ירא ומפחד ומבקש גם על חטא של אחרים שלא יחטאו מסיבתו. ורק ירא ויפחד ויבקש לעצמו שלא יחטא. Until this story, a person would think that when it means to have fear of sin, it means I don't want to do anything wrong. But she taught us something else. She taught us that fear of sin means I also take into consideration that other people shouldn't do things wrong because of me. ומבתולה זו למדנו שצריך להיות ירא ומפחד ומבקש גם בעבור אחרים. That we have to be careful also from things that other people are going to do because they experience us doing things that maybe will cause them to think about things incorrectly. So what is the definition of yirat chet? What's the definition? Not just to care about yourself, but to care about other people's experiencing your wrongdoings or things that maybe are right that you're doing. You're following a halakha, you're hanging a body out there, but you're concerned with how other people are going to react to this very jarring scene. And the Torah is trying to educate the judges of Israel, trying to educate the people of Israel. It's not enough to say, I'm doing the right thing, and because I'm doing the right thing, doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. That's not correct. You must do the right thing in a way that causes other people to do things correctly also. And that's not always so easy. That's why Rabbi Yochanan says, "Lamanu yirat chet bibetula." There's a halakha. I can't tell you it's a law, okay? Because I can't tell you it's a law. But I can tell you that it's definitely in the Talmud, and the Rambam mentions it in Shulchan Aruch. There's a very, very interesting Gemara, Masechet Bava Batra. It's obviously not a true story, okay? But it's a Agadah about one of our Chachamim. His name was Rabbi Bena'a. Bava Batra, page 58a. Rabbi Bena'a was marking burial caves. And he came to Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the tomb of the patriarchs. Anyone familiar with the story? He came to the cave of the patriarchs, and he sees there Eliezer, the servant of Avraham Avinu. So clearly, Eliezer is still around, and the servant, he's still serving Avraham Avinu, and he says, Ma ka'avid Avraham. What is Avraham Avinu doing now? Amar le, he tells him, Gani bechanfa de Sarah. He is laying in the arms of Sarah. V'kama aina le bereshe. And she is checking his head for lice. Makes sense, right? You finally meet Avraham Avinu after 2,000 years. What is he doing? He's getting his hair checked for lice by Sarai Imenu. This Agadah obviously is coming to teach you very deep things, not very simple things, very deep things. But I'm not here giving an Agadah class now. Amar le zil imele. Zil emale. He says to him, go tell him, Bina'a kaya abava. Bina'a is here at the entrance. Meaning, tell him to get out of Sarai Imenu's arms. It's not appropriate that I should walk in on Avraham and Sarah in each other's arms. Amar le, he tells him, Le'ol, come in. Mida yadia de yetzer bayal maleka, ayin ve'unfak. He says, doesn't he know that there's no Yetzirah in this world? The only reason Avraham Avinu and Sarai Imenu are touching each other is because of the lice, not because, God forbid, of anything else. And so you could walk in on them in this kind of compromised situation, and he enters, he measures the cave, and he leaves. Very unusual story. The Rama, Rabbi Moshe Ishalish, makes use of this story in Even HaEzer, chapter 21, Shulchan Aruch. Maran writes, here a halakha that is very important and most people are not careful about. Asur lishtamesh b'isha klal. It's forbidden for a man to use a woman at all. Okay, I'm on camera. I have to be careful. Let me read you the Rama at the end. These halachot, when you tell them to Americans, they get very upset. So I'm just going to skip to the end. The Rama adds a note here on the Shulchan Aruch. And the Rama says, Yesh omrim, some say, דן לנהוג אפילו עם אשתו בדברים של חיבה. כגון לעיין ברשע אם יש לו קינים בפני אחרים. Some say that somebody should not do affectionate things with his wife in public, such as inspecting each other's head for lice or things like that. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch already writes this halakha. There's tremendous amounts of literature. Rabbi Henkin, alav shalom, has letters on whether you can hold your wife's hand in public or not, and Moshe Feinstein has Igot Moshe conversations about this, and everyone goes into what about Hirurim and other people and thinking and doing and that. Let me tell you something very simple. When we walk around the world with our spouses, we are responsible for all of the things that people feel about us. I know the West has taught you otherwise. If there are inappropriate thoughts that come because of us, that's our fault also. But I don't think it's that. I don't think the HaShamayim are coming to tell us that. Do you know how many people in the world wish that they had a spouse like yours? Do you know how many people wish they had a spouse who would hold their hand in the street? Who would put their arm around them when they're sitting somewhere? I see sometimes people, they come, they sit, they don't even bother sitting next to each other, husband and wife. Like, please, put them on the other side of the room. There are people, when you walk around with your children in the street, skipping and dancing, and are you never concerned? What about the people who can't have children? What about people who had children who lost them? What about the people you celebrate a birth, or what about the people who almost were celebrating a birth and then they couldn't? Our halakha requires from us to think differently than selfish people, to not always think about ourselves. There's a really stupid minhag. Forgive me, I rarely, it's not true. I call minhagim stupid sometimes. But this minhag is that by the Brit Milah, it's like the minhag by the wedding. By the wedding, there's a minhag that all the people that are not married yet should come hold the poles of the chuppah. It's like the minhag that the people who can't have children, they should come carry the baby to the Brit Milah. And I'll tell you that as a rabbi sitting in this chair, how many times I've noticed that there are people that don't come to weddings, and they especially don't come to the Brit Milah, because they don't want to be the people that are put on display for the whole community. Like, oh, those are the people that can't have children, why don't we give them the baby? You mean well, but you're hurting people. And you don't even think about it. Now, maybe there are people. Maybe people say, listen, I want to carry the baby. Fine, that's a different story. I didn't come to speak about those people. Someone says, listen, I want to hold the pole of your chuppah. It makes me feel good. Fine. But trust me that all the single people at your wedding, all the ones that are dreaming, they're hopeless romantics, that one day they'll also be under the chuppah, when they're by your chuppah, they're doing their best to fight all the feelings of jealousy because they want to be happy for you. And the one thing you can do is just not make them more jealous than you have to. You have money in the world? Stop showing it to the whole world. Stop flaunting it to everybody. You want to do something with your money, do chesed and tzedakah with your money. Nobody will be jealous of you if you buy them a house, you buy them a car, you pay for their groceries. Nobody will be jealous if you pay their tuition bill. Nobody will be jealous of you when you help them. But when you start to poke out their eyes with your house and your car and your clothes, and your vacations, you start to do that to people you don't mean to. But our Torah requires from us to be concerned about the reactions of other people, on overdrive to be concerned about their reactions. So much so that when Yehoshua is worried about hanging the king of Ai, an enemy, he still says, I don't want someone to doubt HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because they're going to see the king of Ai hanging there. It's the least realistic thing that's going to happen. Probably they're going to dance when they see the king of Ai hanging there. But Yehoshua says, no, I have to take into consideration that there are people who see death, and the one thing they see is doubt in the creator of the universe. And so maybe as we start a new season here of Mishpat Tzedek, maybe the greatest rule that I can ask from you when learning halakha, when learning Torah, particularly these laws that have to do with the nation of Israel, to not be selfish, to not think always about ourselves. I don't suspect this group of that at all. But to look at the wisdom of the Torah, that in every move, the Torah is saying, if I wanted you to be selfish, you don't need all of these mitzvot. I'm asking you to think and to take into consideration everybody's reactions, what everybody else is going to say, what everybody else is going to feel by the way that you behave. And B'ezrat Hashem, we should merit the Kadesh Shem Shamayim Barabim, to constantly, in the way in which we follow Torah, the way in which we believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way the members of this Bet HaMidrash, if you belong to this Bet HaMidrash, my one request is that everywhere that you go in the world, when someone meets you and they talk to you and they hear from you and they discuss Torah with you, they do business with you, they look at you and your family and your children and your spouses, the only thing they walk away with is more love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, more love for the Jewish people, and more love for each other. That should be the purpose, the driving force in everything that we do. And God forbid, we should stay away from anything that causes jealousy, anything that causes hatred, anything that causes division, anything that causes people to look at HaKadosh Baruch Hu and have serious questions and serious doubts. B'ezrat Hashem, like I started, I end. We should merit together in this winter season of learning Torah together. The Kadesh Shem Shamayim. B'ezrat Hashem. Thank you for learning Torah with me.